Hello, and thank you for stopping by. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. If you are not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when new videos arrive. I've taken a little bit of time off because I've had some family issues that I've been dealing with. And I haven't been feeling very good as of late, but I wanted to do something based on a comment that I got on one of my videos. A while back, I did a video about gentrification or regentrification, which means that when an area is gentrified, people move into the area and slowly take it over and turn it in to their community instead of fitting into the community in which it was originally started. Then there's regentrification, which means that somebody comes in to the neighborhood and takes those people and move them out, which as like say a poor neighborhood gets built up a little bit, and then a upper class or a middle class society likes the area, they move into the area, then they take over and they build it up. And then later on, the rich see potential in that area. And so they move in and they oust out all the people that are there. Now, is it intentional or unintentional? Now, it is possible that a neighborhood could have people move in to the neighborhood or into an area. The people move into an area that's open, so they move in and they set up a community and they build up that community and they live there and they have businesses and they have shops and homes and schools and churches and things like that. And that's their community. It's been like that for a long time. Then you have people that want to move out of the area where they're in and they move into that new area and they settle down and they become part of that community. And that's great because they like the community, they like the people in the community, they do business with the community does business with them, and then over time, more people move into the community, and then before you know it, there's more of the new than the old. And the old decide to move out on their own and find a new area to start and rebuild. That's unintentional gentrification. Intentional is that you move into an area with the intentions of moving out the people that live there already. Like say you have a predominantly black community, well-respected community. They've been there for like 100 years and they've got businesses and they've got homes, and then you have people that think that they shouldn't be there. And they move into that community and they start taking over everything. Now, unintentional gentrification happens over time. Intentional gentrification happens in a short amount of time. You force people out. You buy up the banks. You foreclose on houses, you give them mortgage rates that are higher than they can afford, interest rates on loans they paid or that they've gotten that are more than they can afford to pay back, and you foreclose, and that's how you get them out. That's intentional. Now, the person that I was talking to had asked me if southern Seattle, South Seattle, which is predominantly Latino, South Seattle, if they were being gentrified. Now, everything gets gentrified. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you're at, where you came from. Native Americans that lived in America, that roamed this land, hunted buffalo and deer and elk and various other rabbits and things, lived on this land. They weren't perfect. They warred with each other. They got angry at each other. You got on their territory, they would run you off and so on and so on. But when the settlers came here, they gentrified America. In the beginning, it was probably unintentional gentrification, but over time, it became intentional because the white man and other Irish and Italian and various other settlers that moved to America pushed the Native Americans off their land and onto reservations, which was land that they couldn't use. So they pushed it off. Now, I'm going to explain to you what gentrification is. I kind of know what it means, and I can kind of tell you what I think it means, but this is what it says. Gentrification is a process of changing the character of a neighborhood through the influx of more affluent residents and businesses. It is a common and controversial topic in politics and in urban planning. Gentrification often increases the economic value of a neighborhood, but the resulting demographic change is frequently a cause of controversy. Gentrification often shifts a neighborhood's racial and ethnic composition and average household income by developing new, more expensive housing and businesses in a gentrified architectural style and improving the resources in the area. Now, that's just not happening in Seattle. That's happening all over the United States. Well, it's happening all over the world, really. I mean, countries like Japan and China, India, various places like Europe, England, London, England, Germany, Russia. I mean, I'm sure it's going on everywhere. There's people that think you're an eyesore and they want to just push you out. They don't like the poor because they see the poor as not people. They see the poor as a drain on economic resources. It's like if you got a boat with a really big hole in it, and no matter how you repair the boat still leaks. Instead of destroying the boat and rebuilding the boat, which is what they'll do, they'll destroy the boat and rebuild it thinking a hole isn't going to be back in the boat. Now, the boat in itself is good. The boat itself is good. The hole is bad. Now, if they just took the time to properly repair the boat would be seaworthy and they could get many more years out of it. The same thing with neighborhoods that seem low income. They don't know anything, really. I mean, yeah, people say, oh, you have opportunities to go out there and better yourself. No, not really. If that's all you know, you don't know anything else. If that's all you know, that's all you know. Now, there is that exception to the rule where you could break away from all you know and you could become better. You could go to school. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule, like Michael Jordan, he's an exception. Oprah Winfrey is the exception. I'm not saying they didn't work hard for what they got, but they are the exception to the rule. You got a lot of places where they only teach you to become a worker. And there has to be workers because without the workers, there wouldn't be no product. So there always has to be a worker. Not everybody can be an owner of a company. Now, I'm not down on rich folks. I am not down on rich folks, but it depends on what you do. And it's like, it's not what you say, but how you say it. It's not what you do, but how you do it. Bernie Mac used to say that all the time. He was a comedian, and he could get away with all kinds of stuff in his comedy routines because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And it's not what you do, but it's how you do it. Now, I'm not saying you got to be dastardly. I'm not saying you got to be devious, but you cannot be another J.R. Ewing, for those that understand what Dallas is. You can't be another J.R. Ewing. Now, gentrification, is it possible that over time, South Seattle could be upended and changed, and the demographic could be different? Yes. Is it intentional? Not sure. I got to look into that, and I got to see how over time. I have to do some studying, and I have to see if over time people have moved into the neighborhood and taken it over, or if they've just moved into the neighborhood because it was a less expensive place to live and they enjoyed it. Because let's face it, downtown Seattle is very crowded. It's got a lot of homeless. Now, I'm not down on the homeless because I used to be homeless myself for a very long time. I was homeless. But the homeless cannot stay homeless because for two reasons. One, it's not helpful to the homeless to keep them in that situation, and it's not helpful to them to want to stay that way, and it's not helpful to the people in the neighborhoods. It's not helpful to the businesses that have people camped out. People don't want to go into stores when you've got people living on the street right in front of you. So what do? Do you get rid of the homeless? No, you don't get rid of the homeless, but you do get them off the street. Now, I've been talking about taking the Sam's Club, which is out on Admiral Way, and I have been talking about making that into a workable shelter. It's a program where you take the homeless, you put them there, they have 6 months to work on issues that cause their homelessness, and if they don't work on those within 6 months, they're out of the program, but they can't go back to being homeless again. I understand it's your right. You want to live free and you want to be, but your rights do not have the right to harm my rights. The same as my rights don't have the right to harm your rights. Just because I have freedom, that doesn't mean that my freedom can supersede yours. Our freedoms have to work in tandem with each other. So, gentrification. Why is gentrification important? It can be important if you're taking a very poor neighborhood and you're helping build it up, but you're keeping the original tenants in that neighborhood. That can be good. That can be a gentrification that helps the original people that live there. And like I said, people with nothing, that are used to having nothing, moms and dads passing along nothing to their kids having kids, passing along nothing to their kids, year in, year out. That's all they know. That's all they understand. A lot of neighborhoods are like that because nobody wants to invest. And I'm not just talking investing money. I'm talking about investing compassion, investing time, investing your willpower. Like my sister, she lives down in New Orleans, right? And the city doesn't clean up the neighborhood in her neighborhood. And there's some houses that are left over from Katrina that are overgrown. The grass is overgrown. The houses are falling down. They're boarded up. People are sleeping inside, destroying the neighborhood, and it's bringing her property value down. My sister takes it upon herself, along with one or two other of the neighborhood, and they go and they mow the yard once a week. After they're done, they have a big cookout at her house, and they go and mow the yard. They pick up the trash and things like that. If the windows are broke out, the boards have been pulled off, they'll put the boards back on, nail them down shut, and they go from there. Sometimes we have to take it upon ourselves to help our neighbor, even if they're not in our neighborhood. Even if there's people that live in Seattle and various other cities and states and countries even, just because they are not next door to us, that does not make them not our neighbor, if that made any sense. They're our neighbor whether they live next door to us or not. Now, do we care about our neighbor, or do we just care about ourselves? I've talked to a lot of people that have moved to Seattle for a job. That's all they care about is a job. Once that job dries up, they're moving. I talked to another guy. He said that as soon as their kids get out of school, they're taking off and they're going to Hawaii. They didn't move to Seattle to become a resident of Seattle. They moved to Seattle to get a good job and get good schooling. And that in itself is not really that bad of an idea, but it's a it's a it's a very it's not in Seattle's best interest for people to do that. People that move to Seattle, I would hope they would move to Seattle for the reasons I did, because I fell in love with Seattle. I had no idea what Seattle was. I'd never been there, never even heard of Seattle. But I took a girl from Topeka, Kansas, back to her mom and dad because she was homesick. She had just turned 18. I was a photographer and an artist. I bumped into her at a restaurant. We started talking, and I started taking photos of her. And she started to get homesick for her mom and dad, so I put her on a Greyhound. We went up to Everett, Washington. It was Everett, not Seattle. Everett, Washington. And she went back to her mom's. And I was on my way to Los Angeles, and I had a layover in Seattle. And I love Seattle so much that I got a refund on my ticket from Greyhound. And I got a hotel that I stayed in for a week. The Commodore, as a matter of fact. It was in downtown Seattle. And from there, I ended up getting an apartment in Capitol Hill, right off of Broadway. Not too far from the community college, right off of Broadway and Pine. And so I stayed there, got a job working at the Pike Place Market. And I was an artist down in the art gallery on the second floor down. And I got a job working at the Downtown Emergency Service Center down in Pioneer Square. And everything was great. But over time, things started to go bad. People started to move to Seattle just because they needed a place to stay. Not because they liked Seattle, they knew anything about Seattle, or they loved Seattle. And when Microsoft took off in the early to mid 90s, when Microsoft took off, people started coming there to get a tech job, and they wanted that Fraser Crane lifestyle. So once they got that Fraser Crane lifestyle, they started to change the neighborhoods, which is gentrification. They were gentrifying the neighborhoods. Were they doing it on purpose? No. These were young kids, young adults that moved there, young professionals, getting a job, living in fancy apartments. And because the state of Washington did not have any restrictions on rentals, a lot of people from Canada that were paying ultra high taxes on their rentals decided to move down to Washington and the Seattle area and build a lot of apartments, luxury apartments that these people would be able to afford. You want that Fraser Crane lifestyle? We'll build it for you. It doesn't exist, but give us a couple of months. We'll have it ready for you. So other tech companies found out that Microsoft was doing really good, and they decided to become the next Silicon Valley. Now Seattle's going through a identity crisis. They're going through an identity crisis. They are, because they cannot decide if they want to be New York, San Francisco, or Silicon Valley. So I ask myself this: do you want Seattle to be Seattle? Or do you want it to be something else? Because Seattle's losing her identity, and pretty soon she's not going to be all sexy and gorgeous looking with a beautiful skyline that everybody wants to take photos of. Pretty soon Seattle is going to be fat with a lot of ugly buildings in downtown Seattle and various other places. It's happening. So what do you think? How do you see it? In your neighborhood, have you noticed a change? Have you lived in your neighborhood for a long period of time? Has your family lived there in Seattle? Has your family lived there in like Seattle or surrounding areas? Has your family lived there? Or has your family just moved in within, say, the last 20 years? There's a lot of homeless that have moved to Seattle because They're treated nice. Nobody does anything to harm them. The city is afraid to do anything because they're afraid of how it'll make them look. But eventually you got to put your foot down and you got to keep it there and you got to say, enough is enough. If you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please put it in a comment below. If you would like to give me a thumbs up and a like, do that as well. And if you would like to subscribe, please hit that subscribe button down here. Because, like I say, it's up to us to make sure things stay the way it should. I'm not talking vigilantism. But I am saying that we need to vote the right people into office and we need to be able to vet them better. They're not supposed to be here for the rich. They're supposed to be here for us. And once they're in office, they can't be put on cruise control. They cannot be put on autopilot. They have to be nudged a little bit. I remember as a kid, my dad used to tell me this story. When driving a car, you don't force the steering wheel. You don't force it. The car knows where it's going to go. But every so often, you have to nudge the steering wheel to get it back on track. You just nudge it. You don't steer it. You don't force it. Same thing with the city council. If you get the right city council in there, you don't have to force them to do the right thing. But once they start to slack off, you just give them a little nudge and they'll go back in line. I'm going to let you go on this note. Make tomorrow better than yesterday by doing the very best you can today. Have a good afternoon, Seattle, and all points beyond.